with great appreciation to have you all here today alongside the Sudanese. I'm sure they greatly appreciate each one of you, especially considering they don't have internet access still. I've prepared a speech for all of you here today. And since we're still waiting for the food, I think it's a good idea that I just go on with it. A 6-year-old girl was gang raped in a mosque by 10 men in front of several other captives. There is not one word of that sentence that doesn't make my stomach churn. It makes me want to cover my ears and scream, but I feel like I owe it to her to express the indescribable injustice she has endured. I will not narrate every detail of what happened on June 3rd, but I will illustrate it with 6 accounts. Faiza Ahmed Uthman, age 60, cause of death, gunshot. Murad Al-Khadr, age 6, cause of death, gunshot. Rana June, pregnant, age unknown, cause of death, gunshot. Hanafi Abdul Shakur, age 22, cause of death, skull crushed after being run over by an RSF truck. Awad Saeed Atliya, age unknown, cause of death, gunshot. Body was recovered from the Nile. Muhammad Hashim Matar, age 26, cause of death, gunshot. Died whilst protecting 2 women from the RSF. There are just a handful of the hundreds of people killed on June 3rd, many of them thrown in the Nile. It didn't matter that there were children, youth, and the elderly, that there were men and that there were women, that there were unborn children. All that mattered was that they dared to defy. Is there anyone in the world who deserves to be treated like this? Regardless of race, religion, political ideology, regardless of whether they're right or wrong. Omar Bashir was the president of Sudan. He came into power after leading a coup against an elected leader. 30 years later, we'd had enough. The entire country erupted into protests and Bashir finally stepped down. The Transitional Military Council was formed to oversee the change towards a democratic government, and Ahmed Ibn Auf took over. The people protested again, refusing to accept another dictator, and he stepped down after only a day. Then Abdel Fattah Burhan assumed leadership, and the people protested once more. Only this time they were met with a wave of vehement aggression. On June 3rd, 2019, there was a sit-in at a military HQ in Khartoum, the capital city of Sudan, to protest against the Transitional Military Council. Thousands had united to non-violently demonstrate their yearning for a refreshed, progressive, democratic government. They were there to show their desire for a rejuvenation of their country's spirit, but their non-violence was not reciprocated. The Rapid Support Forces, aka Janjaweed, surrounded and attacked them. Over 100 people were killed and hundreds more injured. Dozens were raped. For those of you who are not familiar, the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF for short, are paramilitary forces managed by the Sudanese government. They act on the government's orders and on their behalf. They carried out widespread torture, rape, and executions during the war in Darfur, and burnt and demolished homes. They also deployed in Yemen. They're also deployed in Yemen, fighting alongside Saudi Arabia in what is being called one of the worst humanitarian crises in history. You don't have to be Muslim, African, or even Sudanese to care. You only have to be human. Here in Denmark, we have the privilege of democracy. I call it a privilege. Why? Because it gives us safety and security. It holds the government accountable and responsible. Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Since 1969, Sudan has seen 5 successful military coups, 5 coups in 50 years. The people needed a revolution, and so they took it to the streets. They ousted a tyrannical leader and demanded a civilian government, but were met with yet another oppressive military ruler. They're now being showered with bullets and tortured and battered and raped. The RSF are attempting to destroy them physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. They're trying to defile them, dishonor them, dehumanize them, using fear as a weapon of mass torment. And they are failing monumentally. We demand democracy and will continue to fight for it, not with violence and weapons, like primitive barbarians, but with displays of courage and defiance, by leaving our homes and workplaces despite the threats to our lives, and by refusing in return until we have a leader of our choosing, who will act in our interests to better our country. They tried to drive us inside, but we stormed out in the thousands. They tried to turn our cries for justice into screams of pain, but we kept calling. They tried to black out the internet, but we painted it blue. Thank you.